Hi everybody, my name is Kishan Silvaratnayaka and I'm a customer success architect here at Broadcom. As we are all experiencing, most companies are asking their employees to work from home. As many employees will now VPN into their company network, how can you ensure a stable and reliable experience? When implementing a work from home strategy, do you have the insight into your VPN gateway user load to ensure that the added load will not affect performance? So today, what we will go over is how we can quickly build a DX NetOps dashboard with 3 metrics, VPN specific, that gives you valuable insight into your VPN infrastructure and also help you deliver a reliable work from home experience to your end users. So let's get started. So the first step would be to discover your VPN devices in your environment, and to do that within the NetOps portal, we would go into administration, monitored items management, and discovery profiles. We'll click on new to create a new discovery profile. We will call it VPN gateways and add the list of devices that we want to discover. In addition to this configuration, you can also define a schedule, define which specific SNMP profiles you want to associate with the discovery profile, and also define the naming order and whether you want to create pingables during discovery. We are going to leave these configurations as the defaults and save this discovery profile and execute it. There we go. So during discovery, it will go out to the network and see whether those devices exist in the network, and if it does, then it will use the SNMP profiles and the SNMP community strings to interrogate those devices to see if SNMP is enabled, and if they are manageable, then it will gather some basic MIB2 data from those devices. For example, the vendor, the sysname, the location. So basics SNMP MIB2 data. So let's refresh this, and the discovery is complete, as you can see. So we'll select the discovery profile and click on the history button to understand some details with regards to the discovery. So we see the discovery summary here. It's found 3 new devices, 3 new manageable devices, and it has a start time and an end time. And as you can see, it took about 11 seconds to do that discovery. And down below here, it shows us the 3 devices that were discovered and the system name, the model. It's done a classification of these devices to be firewalls. It found out the vendor to be Palo Alto Networks, and then the location, and finally it also lists the SNMP profile it used for that interrogation. So let's click OK, and the next step would be to create a collection of these devices so we can apply some monitoring configuration against that set of devices, specifically to get the VPN performance metrics. So to create a collection of devices within the NetOps portal, we'd go into administration, group settings, and into the group section. And in the group configuration management section, we will go into the collections, expand collections, select collections, and add a group. So I will call it VPN gateways. So there are a couple of ways to populate this VPN gateways collection, this device collection, with the devices that we want it to have. So one way is to manually add these devices into this collection, or we could use a rule to populate this particular collection with the devices that we want. The advantage of using a rule is if there's a naming convention that you follow in your environment against these particular types of devices, then you could create a rule that looks for that naming convention format and then automatically applies them into this group. So in the future, when you discover a new device and it matches that naming convention and the format, it would automatically get added to this device collection, and the monitoring configuration applied to that device collection would automatically get applied to that device as well. So you wouldn't have to manually come in and add that device to this collection. So let's go ahead and add that rule. So since this is a device collection, I am going to select devices and add the condition for my naming convention, and for my device name is like, and in my environment the naming convention is firewall.fw.vpn. Right, so we'll click OK, and let's preview the results to make sure that my rule is sufficient. Expand, and I can see the 3 devices that I had discovered previously. All right, so we'll go ahead and run the rules, save and run the rules. And now when I go into the items tab, I see the 3 devices that I had discovered earlier. Now they are part of this device collection. So now that we've created this device collection, the next step would be to create the monitoring configuration and apply that against these devices. And the monitoring configuration is to collect those VPN metrics that we are interested in. So to do that, within the DX NetOps portal, we'll go into administration, monitored items management, and monitoring profiles. So the monitoring profiles is basically the monitoring configuration that you want to poll against a set of devices. So which metric families and which metrics you want to go and poll and collect information against, and it also defines how often you want to go and poll that, what your poll rate is. So let's go ahead and create a new monitoring profile. So in here we will specify VPN gateway. We'll just call it VPN gateway. Oops. Right, we leave the default SNMP poll rate and the change detection, and in here the remote user gateway stats is the metric family that contains the VPN metrics that we are interested in. So I'm going to add that and save that. So all we've done so far is discovered the devices, created the collection of those devices, and then created a monitoring profile. Now we've got to marry the monitoring profile and the collection together so that this monitoring configuration applies to those devices in that collection. So to do that, once we select this monitoring profile, we'll go into collections and select that collection we created. Right. And now, once we've done that, now this monitoring configuration has been applied to that collection, and then all the devices under that collection would get this monitoring configuration. So in this case, it's the remote user stats, the VPN metrics. So it would start collecting that data on those devices. So let's validate that. So to validate that, we'll go into the monitored inventory, monitored devices, and in here we'll see the collection that we had created previously. Once we expand that, we see the 3 devices that is part of that VPN gateways collection. Select the device, go into polled metric families, and we'll do a filter here for remote. And there you go. We see that the metric family remote user gateway stats has been applied against this device, and it has interrogated that device and found out that the Palo Alto Global Protect Gateway vendor certification is supported on that device. And if we select this line, it shows that those metrics are being actively polled now every 5 minutes, right? So now we can validate this on the other 2 VPN gateways as well. Yep, and as you can see, it's being actively polled. And then finally the last one here, same there as well, it's actively polled. Now to see which metrics are being polled and calculated against these devices for VPN stats, we can click on the vendor certification, and it shows us the metrics that are being polled. So, the name and description, of course, but the performance metrics are the ones down here, the three down here. So there's the number of active users right now, the concurrent users. Then there's the percentage of the gateway tunnel utilization, and then finally the maximum number of allowed connections, right? The user connections into that gateway. So those are the three VPN metrics that we're collecting on those three devices. So now that it's collecting these metrics, the next step would be to go ahead and create a dashboard to report on these metrics. So to create a dashboard in DX NetOps portal, what you would do is you go into the dashboard section. I'm going to click on dashboard, so it gives me a listing of all the dashboards under each menu item. And we're going to create this dashboard under the infrastructure health menu. I'm going to click on add dashboards, and that will bring us into the dashboard configuration section, and I'll give it a dashboard name. I'm going to call it VPN Gateway Health. All right, and then you can select a layout. I'm going to select this particular layout, and then on the left hand side here you see all the different views that are available for you to just drag and drop into this dashboard. What I'm going to create is some custom views, configure some custom views. So I'm going to create a multi-trend, a multi-view, and use a table. So in the multi-trend configuration, what this particular view allows you to do is see multiple trends of a particular metric, and what I like to do in case of these VPN metrics is I'd like to see a stacked chart for the concurrent users, and you would see for each particular VPN gateway its own area, and then once it gets stacked you would see the total number of VPN connections in your environment. So it's a great view to have. So I'm going to say stack chart, go to remote user gateway stats, and then concurrent user connection. So that's the metric that I was looking for. I'm going to say maximum number of charts to 50. All right, do it by device. And then you also have the capability to lock this view to always report on a certain range of time, and then also on a specific set of devices in a group. So I'm going to use our device collection that we had created earlier. So I'm going to lock this to that particular collection, so it always reports on that data. And now that I've done that, I'll give it a title. So I'll say concurrent user connections trend. All right. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to save that. Then the multi-view, this will break down for each component, for each device, a particular metric. And in this case, I like to report on the percentage of the utilization of the connections. So user connection, the percent utilization user connections, and I will change the title. User connections. All right, and I'm going to do a trend chart by device, and the number of page charts on a page, I'll just say 20. And then just like the previous one, I'm going to lock this to that particular collection we had created earlier. So it always reports on this, on these devices. And that's it. Click save. And then finally, we have a table here, and in the table, what I like to report on is what has been the maximum number of user connections to a particular VPN gateway for a given period of time, and what the maximum allowed user connections are for a given VPN gateway. So I'll just call this VPN connection stats, and then change the metric family to the VPN one. I'll take the name and description out, and so I want the maximum number of concurrent user connections that have come in for a given VPN gateway, and then also show me what the maximum allowed user connections are for a given gateway, right? So we'll show top 50, and then again I'm going to lock this to that particular collection we had created, VPN gateways, and great. So we'll save that. And now once we click save, this will go ahead and start populating the performance data it's been collecting on those 3 devices. And as you can see here, we have some data that we've already collected. So it's showing us a stack chart here of the concurrent user connections. So for each VPN gateway, we get a number, and then the total number of VPN users connected currently, right? You know, the trend chart is around what, between 4.5 and 5. That's 1,000 here. So that's between 4,500 and 5,000 users. So maybe around 4,750, right? So there's around 4,750 users connected through VPN. And then on the right hand side, this is the percentage of user connections for each VPN gateway, right? And then finally, we also see the maximum number of user connections that have come in for a given gateway, a VPN gateway, and then this is the maximum allowed, right? So we can see that this particular gateway, the San Jose gateway, you know, it's hovering close to 50%, right? The maximum has been close to 50%, and the other ones not so much, right? So it gives you an idea of what your VPN utilization numbers are in your environment. So in addition to creating a dashboard to view and report these VPN gateway metrics, we can also configure thresholds to proactively monitor the VPN environment before a major outage occurs. So to do that within DX NetOps portal, we'll go into administration, monitored items management, and threshold profiles. And we'll create a new folder here for organization purposes, and we'll call it VPN client connections. Save that. And underneath this folder, we'll create a new threshold profile. So we'll name it VPN connections over 90%, and create a new event rule for the condition VPN client connection over 90%. All right, and the metric family and the metric we would be interested in is the percentage metric for the VPN connections, and we will say if it's above 90%, we say above or equal to 90%, then generate this major event, and if it's below 90%, then go ahead and clear that violation. And we use the time to threshold technique in DX NetOps to understand if a threshold has breached within the environment. So it would look at this particular metric, and look at the duration and the window and take those things into consideration to understand if that threshold has occurred. So now that we've configured our event rule, we'll save that and save our threshold profile. And the next thing would be to apply this threshold profile against the group of devices that we would be interested in thresholding against. So we would go and apply this particular threshold profile to our VPN gateway collection, right? And click OK. And there you have it. So within a few easy steps, we were able to quickly create a threshold profile and specify the rules for those thresholds and then apply it to a set of devices. So now that we've gone through the process of discovering your VPN gateway and configuring monitoring on those devices, creating a dashboard and setting up thresholds, let's take a look at a production environment and what it may look like. So looking at this particular dashboard, right at the top here, we see a geo map of the VPN sites showing the status of each VPN gateway. We can drill down to a specific location and see very specific VPN related data, right? We can exit out of those. And then if we scroll down to the other parts of this dashboard, we see the VPN gateway total user connections, showing us a stack chart of all the users connected to each particular VPN gateway, and it gives us an overall view of the total number of VPN users. So we see here that the total number of VPN users across the globe here is around a little over 10K, right? Then on the right hand side here, we see a trend chart of the percentage of users connected to each VPN gateway. And down here, a table of the maximum number of users that have connected to a gateway and the maximum allowed number of connections to each gateway, so that they can understand, are they getting close to those limits? And then in addition to these VPN related metrics, right, user connections, they've also configured CPU utilization to understand the CPUs on these VPN gateways. Are they running hot? For example, these CPU2 CPUs are the data plane CPUs that are responsible for the data plane processing. So if any of those CPUs are running hot, then performance on those VPN gateways could be affected. And then further down here, there's a table view of showing us some VPN interface statistics that shows us discards and errors. So if there are any sorts of discards and errors taking place on those interfaces, then again, that's user experience would be affected because now there are packets being dropped. So this kind of gives you an overall view of what your production VPN health dashboard may look like. So I want to thank you for taking the time today to listen to this webcast and hope this was beneficial to you. Thank you.